Nominate the youth sports volunteer that you know for the Hercules Hero of the Week. Submit your nomination at kslsports.com/contest and listen every Thursday afternoon to JJ and Alex for the winner. Help us celebrate the efforts of those volunteers who make an unbelievable impact with the Hercules Hero of the Week. And it's sponsored by Hercules First Federal Credit Union. And go ahead, DJ, tell me who else.
No idea.
Beehive Meals.
Question of the morning. Off the big news yesterday, Craig Smith fired at the University of Utah. He is out as basketball coach. What do you make of it? Thoughts? There are a lot of people who have watched this go and are not sorry to see this happen. Margaret, he looked totally lost at the last of their last game. The team had just lost 7 straight. Unacceptable defeat.
You're talking about UCF there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a bad last minute. I mean, they played well at the start, but then the other team made a run. That's no big deal. That seems to happen. A 15-4 lead, 3 minutes in the game doesn't do a whole lot for me. But they played well to get back in it and tie the ball game and all that. And then, the last minute or so, I don't know that I'm going to judge them on the last minute, but things have not been going well enough. That's for sure.
Mark says he was more on the hot seat than I thought he possibly would be. I thought he'd make it through this next season at the bare minimum. Mark thought he had one more year.
I did too, but I have to reflect upon myself. I'm reluctant to fire coaches. Like I thought Krzysztofiak could have gotten another year, but he didn't. And there were some issues there that, he wanted to, I think Harlan wanted coaching changes and Larry didn't want to make them, blah, blah, blah. And who knows? Was it the right decision? Well, you haven't really made any progress based on making that decision. And now the program is getting into what a lot of programs have. You have a legend, which they had in Majerus, for whatever you want to think of him. He was really good. And then everybody since then, which has been 20 years, has been fired. And that's not good. Now we're on 20 years. I think Ray's first year was 04-05, which is this very year, 20 years later.
Yep. So it's 3 NCAA tournament bids in 20 years. It's 4 in 21 since Majerus was here, but it's 3 in the last 20. Ray put Majerus' team back together and went to a Sweet 16. But it's now 3 bids in 20 years, and it's 4 coaches getting fired, and that's a lost generation of fans who don't have the great memories and the flags waving and the place packed and the team winning and all that stuff, which they pretty much had in every decade for 6 straight decades. They really had a role in there for a long time.
The thing for me is the number of the consecutive coaches who've been fired. Because then it becomes a dead-end job. You can have a lot of coaches. Utah State's had a lot of coaches.
But they're moving on and getting jobs. And they're getting better jobs. They're making more money.
Right. So there's Odom, I'm not so sure about that. I think he wanted
lateral move. He wanted to go back east.
Yeah. But the other guys, clearly. And so they went from Stu and I can see his face. I can't think of his name. The guy who succeeded him, he got fired. But then that's it, right? So it's the number of coaches that get fired that's really just jumps out at me because that means your program stinks or it's not good enough. And for Utah, maybe it doesn't stink, but on Utah's level of expectation, which is deserved to have a high level expectation because you and I have only been here a slice of time, but yet we have seen some great basketball, and then we can go back and look, a guy who's 65, 75, and so forth, they can recite it personally because they were there, and so it is a proud program, one of the best in the West, and Majerus obviously had one of the best in the country, and now you have these coaches fired. I mean, when Urban wasn't fired, and so the program then didn't really skip a big beat. They were reloading to an extent, but they promoted somebody. That's what you'd rather see. Coaches can come and go, as Utah State has shown, but don't have them all be fired because then that's where it gets really bad, and that's where we're at.
Tony says it's not fully Craig Smith's fault. It's all about the Benjamins nowadays. If Harlan wants a good team, he needs to find some more money.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that.
I think there's more than some. I think there's a lot of truth to that.
I don't know. Is Utah State just rolling out big amounts of money?
No, but they're not playing in the Big 12 either.
Yeah, but he didn't play in the Big 12 until this year.
True.
So, and I don't think there's a big difference between Pac-12 basketball and Mountain West basketball. There normally isn't. You want to go Big 12, you got me there. But he's not getting fired on a sole season in the Big 12. You need the money. There's no doubt about it. There's just no doubt about it. There's no question about it. I understand that completely. That's the reality of the world. What's his face? Fran Fraschilla, our guy, I've known him for years. He put that out in a tweet or in a post on X. You can go read it, where this isn't about coaching. And I get that. So I'm strongly agreeing with you.
And the cost of poker is only going to go up. Like whatever was good 3 years ago isn't good enough now, and will that be good enough in 3 years? Probably not.
Yeah, we'll see. What this settlement on the $20 million that the schools can pay. I think we might have some leveling out there. I'm not sure though. I want to see how it goes. I'm just repeating what coaches have told me about that as far as what they think, and I've had multiple coaches in multiple sports tell me they're looking forward to that. Money to be able to be distributed, and they think that it'll help their football program, basketball program. So I don't know. I don't know personally, but I'm repeating what people who are invested in this tell me.
And I 100% believe you've been told that. I 100% believe they've said that, and I 100% believe they want to believe that.
I think, no question they want to believe that, because that
that's
levels the
the
field.
part, and that's the part that makes me uneasy.
Okay, yeah.
Because you want to believe it,
right?
But the fact is, if the other school down the street or if the other powerhouse in the conference wants to win enough and wants to raise a little more money, then the race is back on again. So I think that first year or two when it hits, it'll be like, okay, and then quickly it'll be on again.
Yeah, I think that but depending on, I get your point, but if they want to win at all costs, but the coaches here that I'm talking to are in town,
yeah.
or down the road, if you
Sure.
get my drift.
I do.
They're looking for, let's go football, they're looking for 11-2 seasons.
Uh-huh.
They're not necessarily looking for a spot in the final, because for them to stay employed and get raises, 11-2 is going to happen every season. No coach at BYU or Utah is going to get fired at 11-2 unless they have some off the field stuff. You're just not.
They're not.
Because that's a great season no matter how you spin it. And so they're looking at being able to compete on a relative level and have a lot of success. When you win 11 ball games, you're feeling great. Everything about life is awesome. You're probably not competing against Ohio State and so forth, but that's always been unrealistic. Why would that change now? Now, basketball, you can say, and I can hear what people are saying, wait a second, man, we had the lead on Kentucky at halftime, and you did. So it is a different animal. For basketball.
But I would also attribute some of that to Majerus magic, and he was just really good at getting the most out of his players.
But he
for
got
the Utes,
players,
he
too.
did. But for the Utes, the standard has to be get to the NCAA tournament more often than not, and then let's see some Sweet 16s in the mix. Because lots of coaches up on the Hill have gone Sweet 16. I think only 3 of the coaches up there have gone Final Four, but they have done it 4 times under 3 different coaches over the years, all different sets of circumstances. I did almost. Yeah. I took a very shallow breath. That was a mistake by me.
See, and you'll grow from that mistake.
I got to sit up straight, expand the lungs, stop slouching.
What Bear was talking about.
Yeah,
I'm the guy who runs out of breath.
Yeah.
All that stuff is true. And to an extent, and I know this sounds dramatic, but take it with a poetic license, it pains me to see Utah basketball go through this. When I was there at the Watchdog, sitting there for all those years, all those games, it was the place to be, man. It wasn't BYU. It was Utah all the way. And they earned it. And to see it slip away, to an extent, it bothers me. I don't have the passion of growing up as a Utah fan, but I was inside that program for so many years.
And that decade that you were there day in and day out was really good, but you also knew, because you were talking to people who'd been there in the 60s, 70s, 80s, how good those decades had been. And you
Yeah.
could look in the media guide. Well, in some places, you probably talked to a guy who was there in the 40s and 50s, and Arnie Farron. So it was 60 straight years. It's not like everything was great, but there was way more good than bad.
Right.
They were at a high level for 60 years. And you went to a Final Four, you went to multiple Sweet 16s, you talked to Arnie Farron, and he won a championship. They brought up other teams. In the 60s, they had a couple of Final Four teams. And now it's 20 years with 3 NCAA bids, and it should be a national program.
Right.
It should be better than this. Everybody knows it. That's the promo you just heard. Josh, I think it was Josh Grant was on the air in the afternoon saying the customers are right. The customers are right. They're not coming. The program doesn't match the standard. And I think that's the standard is NCAA tournament more often than not, and you got to mix in some Sweet 16s. Majerus went to 4 of them. Jerry Pym went to 2 or 3 of them before that. And you can keep going back, previous coaches, and find those Sweet 16s and Final Fours.
4 for Pym.
4 for Pym. I cheated him. My bad.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a highly successful run. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't here, obviously, in the 70s, but I've certainly, as an NBA fan, the tag team that I heard and that I knew of, Chambers and Brains.
Chambers and Brains.
I knew of them.
Yeah.
And so when I get hired in 1993, the Tribune gives me a choice. What do you want to cover? Not a choice of anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's a choice of some things. And they put 3 or 4 different what we call beats on the table for me. This was literally at the airport.
Yeah.
I'm at the airport getting ready to go back to L.A. when they come out.
And
offer me the
Utah
job.
basketball sounds good. Those guys are good. You've been in L.A., you know.
Exactly. Yes.
I was in San Diego and Santa Barbara.
Right.
I knew.
And so I knew of Chambers and Brains. I didn't know them personally, but I certainly knew them. I knew who they were. I knew they played at Utah. I knew they were high picks. And then Chambers had played for the Suns, so that was another local connection. So I thought, well, sure, Utah basketball. Of the choices that were available to me, which were some pretty good choices, that appealed to me the most. And I made the right decision. And I also, which then ended up as a side note to so many people over there hating me because I got the pick and they didn't. And so, I got the number 1 choice.
Yeah.
And look at you go.
There was a core of people, and then the radio. Oh my gosh! But that's soap opera stuff, and they can all do what to themselves. You know that. I'm still here doing my thing, but it was basketball because of the rep that I knew. I didn't know jack about Utah football. I literally knew nothing, and there were a couple other things that were pretty good. Any of them would have been good for sure. But I chose Utah basketball because I knew of it. And to see it now, 4 coaches been fired since Majerus hopped on a plane that night and did what he did?
Giacoletti, and then Boylan, and then Kristoviak, and now Craig Smith.
And what's funny is the other 3, it's like ASU football. Every coach since 87, since John Cooper has left, has been fired. And put Herm off to the side. We all want to forget him.
Some coaches obviously were going to get fired.
But they all had success. They just couldn't ride it.
Couldn't sustain it.
And you look at Giacoletti, success. Boylan, success. Larry, success. Boylan had success.
He went to 1 NCAA tournament game.
That's success.
Yeah. In 5 years, he had 1 game, and it was the year that Giacoletti's recruits were seniors.
4 years.
He was there 4?
Mm-hmm. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah. He went 24-10. So he goes 18-15 his first year. Second year, 24-10, and then 2 losing seasons. And then Chris Hill didn't like all the buffoon stuff.
Right.
We'll go Utes, and my wife, she doesn't like me this week. And they're taking the mic.
Yeah.
That really turned him off. And then Larry had 26-9, 27-9.
It was hard to believe it fell apart. It was a really good.
You're thinking, all right, they're back.
It was not only the 2 seasons that paid off. The year in front of it, you could see it coming. the year before they.
Well, you can see all years.
You could. Yeah. I mean,
There was
year
improvement
zero, the year
every
zero
year.
was probably one of the best lines. Whoever came up with that was an awesome line.
The first year, our first 4 years, he literally improved every year. And then, obviously, in the fourth year, he got him to the Sweet 16. And they got beat by Duke. And the next year, I think
second round,
Gonzaga crushed them.
Yeah.
Over in, if I want to say Denver, I was sitting courtside for that.
And then
to see why as I said, Craig Smith isn't judging on just simply 1 year in the Pac-12 or the Big 12 is I've always believed, and I had a little bit of bias because I was covering the Mountain West or /WAC, that there was no difference. So Larry then in 2017, 2018, they had 2 years in a row in which they finished third in the Pac-12 and they didn't go to the NCAA tournament. That ain't happening in better basketball conferences.
That was a bad era of Pac-12 basketball.
Yeah. That's why I'm saying Utah State is winning. Don't compare it to the Big 12. That's a joke. But the Pac-12.
There's some parallels there you can point out.
Yeah, and they've been getting it done.
Yeah, and you can see what happened when Oregon State and Washington State went into the West Coast Conference. Washington State's in the bottom half of the league. You think Oregon State's running fourth or fifth.
So this is a big time hire. You can't go 5 coaches getting fired in a row. No, you got to get this one right.
There is another thread, another theory that runs through this storyline, and we will get to that next. Stay with us.